Encouraged to register in large numbers to benefit from the newly introduced agricultural inputs and support program, the Mo Letlotlo. SAREC launches a gender mainstreaming resource kit. And in sports, development of chess players at grassroots level essential for creating future champions. Farmers have been encouraged to register in large numbers to benefit from the newly introduced agricultural inputs and support program, the Mo Letlotlo. The plea was made by the President, Dr. Mokgweetsi Masisi, when addressing Nerala residents this morning. Kigantse Khumalo.
The plowing season has already been declared throughout this country, even though the dry spell has left farmers distressed, wondering if they will be able to yield anything this season. However, President Masisi motivated farmers to take advantage of the new program, which is intended at promoting productivity.
Batho ba kgaolo e ba khopeng le tse di mo tikologong ke balemi. Akira lema ha ke re ba bangwe a se balemi le lona la lema ke go tla go le rotloetsa le go tlhomamisa gore lenaneo le re ne re le ribolla maloba ha re le kokanye la temo letlotlo le bona bo gautshwane ikwadiseng ke bua ikwadiso yana le a go letsatsi yana nako e tsamaile mo go tlhobaetsang ebile go tshwenya ka gore re mo ngwageng wa luba mme kana gore ha go itlhobogwe hela ka gore pula ha eyo ha go itlhobogwe ka gore go letsatsi sengwe se tla lekega mme e tla ta nako ya gore gongwe re bege re re nako e tšhaile a re sa tlhola re senya madi.
Kerala residents commended government for developments which have transformed their constituency.
Leboge government wa gago mo dithabollong tse re di temogelang ka mathwa rona ebile re le basupi jana gore spatela se re sa bolong golla ka sone kana go bua ka sone go diragetse ra ka hatase ga government wa gago gore go bo go supagetse gore ra go agelwa spatela ra etso ke re ke lebogele dithabollo tse dintseng jalo
ra etso go bapela le motse wa Larala gona le Martin Street border mme ga o bapisa Martin Street mongame go dipolase tsa batswana ba basweu ga go motlhofo gore bodiredi jwa itshireletso bo bapele mo hapha wa noka bo lekole mololwane ka sebele ne re kopa gore ebile ke a tlhaloganya re itse gore o tautona yo o rerang gongwe o rome bana ba gago ba go dira morero wa gaphegileng le bora dipolase ba bapile le molelwane gongwe go katolose bodiredi jwa itshireletso bo kgone go lekola noka bo sa kgorelwe ke tsone dipolase tse mongana.
President Masisi says he will continue to engage Botswana on government initiatives and programs through platforms like Khotla meetings.
Still in Lerala, President Dr. Mokgweetsi Masisi spoke strongly against the recent spate of murders which continue to escalate in different parts of the country. His Excellency emphasized the need for the public to assist police with their investigations in order for justice to be served. He said this during a Khotla meeting in Lerala this morning. With the report.
There has been a public outcry due to reaction to different cases of people being abducted and their lifeless bodies later being found with body parts missing, suspected to have been harvested for ritual purposes. The country's leadership advocates for more joint efforts to combat and alleviate such behavior, which they say interferes with the peace of this country.
ka go harologana ga rona le ka maemo a rona gore kgale ya ka ke kgala ke menne phatla mokgwa o ne minister Musi a bua ka one wa go akanya gore go hetsa botshelo ba motho ke bone botlhale ebile ke gone ya ka le wena o itshinkela botshelo go botlhoko ke kgale mokgwa gore setšhaba e re se bona go iragala matlhokwana e ba tlhosetsa molelo le bone
batsadi re tlhasetswe ke dipolao tsa bana ampo tsa bana tsa bananyana tsa bagolo tsa eng mme le gore tota dipolao tse gate go irwa go a ithatagadiwa mme nako le nako ga ke amogela direpoto go tswa ko mapodising go umakiwa dingaka tsa Setswana go umakiwa baruti.
Residents of Lerala shared their concerns, many of which involved criminal activities in the area.
Ke kopa gore o re lalletse me matsile go rate mo kgaolong ya ga o bana bo mme ba dijale tse di tshouba ba thona be bothoko jana ra aparetswe ke dikgang tsa gender based violence re le bo mme le bana ba basetsana gongwe ha ka taga ka botsadi ja gagwe le bogolo ja gagwe ra di buisana ra di kopanela ra mo itekudisa re ka robalwa ke dithoko
re na le bana ba itela le gore ba faila form 3 itela le gore ke bone ba eleng gore khosi moroka o lela ka bone a re ke bone ba thoka tsebe ka le baka la gore ga bana se ba se dira
ga re roba le tautona ga re retse di radio tsa rona di TV tsa rona ka le baka la modumo o teng bana ba setse ba bolani bile ba bolaile ba bangwe mo go tsone di bara tsonetse engwe gone ha pele ga yone khota eo le mo go yone tautona e bana ba kanna ba bedi mo ngwagong ono ba setse ba lathagetswe ke matshelo a bone a ileng gore ba bolaelwa teng hale ile ka ntata modumo.
The public was implored to actively play a role in helping the country to maintain its peace and stability, ensuring safety for all, this forming the foundation of the country's 2036 vision pillars. Ke letleletswe Somolekae, BOTSWANA Television.
Member of Parliament for Molapole South, also the Minister for State President, Mr. Kabo Moraing, has expressed concern over the rapid increase of missing person cases, particularly in Molapolole. The minister highlighted this in Parliament yesterday. Wabetsu Mpulubusi reports.
Molapole has been experiencing an increasing number of missing persons cases who in most instances are found dead. Recently, these incidents caused the public to protest against such acts by vandalizing personal properties of people they believe to be suspects as well as government properties. The Member of Parliament for Molapole South, Mr. Kabo Moraing, says this situation is a concern as people are losing their lives and this also instills fear on the residents.
Ra lemoga gore dikgang tsa GBV di ntse di teng ra utlwa gore bangwe ke dikgang tsa GBV mme ba bangwe go na le menahune ya gore ba jewa ke batho ba ba bidiwang boraboko ka re gatwe mme ke re seemo sonese re le ba Molepolole ga se re robatse seemo sonese re le ba Molepolole ga se re itumedise.
As this situation is a cause for concern, as lives are lost, the Member of Parliament expressed displeasure over protesters who end up taking the law into their own hands. He says the public should accord the law enforcement officers a chance to investigate these incidents.
Kopo ya me ke gore re se ka ra tsa molao ka matsogo a rona. Ba eleng gore re hitlhela seemo sentsana mo dikgaolong tsa rona a re tlogeleng mapodisi ba dire tiro ya bone re bo re ba thuse go senya dithoto ya ka re di sentse re itshenyeditse ko Molepolole ga go a re thusa ka sepe a re tlogeleng mapodisi re bo re ba thuse batho betso.
Meanwhile, Mr. Moraing highlighted that on the 30th of this month, Khosi Kgare III of BOTSWANA will address Molepolole residents at the main Khotla concerning these alarming incidents in his village. Wabetsu Mpulubusi, BTV News, Gaborone.
SADC commemorated the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence and launched the Gender Mainstream Resource Kit that will help guide the Secretariat and member states to address gender equality issues in a systematic way. The Deputy Executive Secretary for SADC, Dr. Judith Katera, says the Gender Mainstreaming Resource Kit encourages gender equality and inclusivity. Horata Moranyane with the details.
2008, the SADC Gender Mainstreaming Resource Kit was adopted as a step-by-step sector-specific guide to assist in the region's effort to standardize approaches towards gender mainstreaming in the ultimate aim to contribute to the achievement of gender equality. The Gender Mainstreaming Resource Kit, that entails 10 modules, was officially launched yesterday. The Deputy Executive Secretary of Corporate Affairs said that governments and the private sector should invest in economies, but not forgetting pursuit of gender equality.
Of implementing the mainstreaming of gender in the various sectors of the economy, be it in industrialization, be it in agriculture, food security, mining, any economic sector, we need to mainstream gender. And this we are emphasizing. If you look at our theme, it's saying invest. That's the key word. So we are encouraging governments, we are encouraging private sector, development partners to invest in economies, but with gender in mind. We must mainstream gender. Wherever you find men, let's make sure women are also taken on board. So in the next 16 days, we want to preach the gospel of encouraging men to work closely with women, and there's respect to both parties in order to ensure that there is sustainable development in the SADC region.
Gender-based violence is still prevalent in the region, and the Gender Mainstreaming Resource Kit is epitomized as the perfect tool to address the challenge.
It demonstrates the entry points to say, if you are to address gender issues within that sector, what are the key things that you need to look out for? If you are not, you need to look at how are women and men engaged in that particular sector. Are they benefiting accordingly? Are they all participating accordingly? This toolkit gives you that guidance to say, how do you establish that? How do you assess your programs to make sure that you see if everyone that has to benefit is benefiting? Then it also takes you a step further to say, now if you have identified these gaps, what are the key strategies to use in order to promote whoever is left behind? To promote
KIT is a guideline for both member states and the SADC Secretariat, and it is aligned to the revised SADC Protocol on Gender and Development. It has thus been developed to provide a step-by-step practical guide on gender mainstreaming to each of the key development sectors across the region.
The commemoration of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence kick-started on the 26th of November 2023. Horata Moranyane, BTV News, Gaborone.
After Charles Hill was hard hit by a shortage of water, following the discovery by Water Utilities Corporation that the borehole supplying the village with water was contaminated. The situation will now come to pass in the next 6 months as Golden Pumps Company has been awarded the tender to connect water from Kanagas to Charles Hill.
Charles Hill has been without water for almost a year now, and Water Utilities Corporation brought the good news here in Charles Hill to inform residents about the just started emergency water project that will see Golden Pumps connecting water from Kanagas.
Make emergency project. So solo hello ya rona ke gore ere pela ga 6 months kana within 6 months tiro e be we ditswe me tiro e re hile contract ya batswana ele molao gore o setse morago gore re tshwanela ke gore re hire batswana re tlhame ditiro me rona re le koperasi re dirile jang ya no solo hello ke gore le bone ba tle go tlhama ditiro kwana.
Village leadership could not hide their excitement.
Ba ga etsole phata haere selo se seo le tswelela ka go le kudisa gore re tla nna le bothata jwa metsi re tla nna le bothata jole jo ba tsena mo lekgotleng ba le kudisa bokgosi ke tiro e ntle ba gaetso e re tshwantse gore re le bogele mme ebile ne dira gore le bana ba lona jaaka ne ke bua ka makhanselara ba eme ka dinao ba bona gore ba ka thusa ka ditswampelo ka tsela e ntseng jang ke selo se ile gore ra se lebogela motsamaisa tiro
nyora tsa tshotego me motha o gorogile o bile ke moruti mongwe yo ka sekimwe ka leina motha o gorogile wa gore dipaakanyo di goroge ke nako ya gore re itumelele puso ya letsatsi gobane e nne ya nna le go rekegela selelo sa rona re le ba motse wa Charles Hill ya bona go tshwanela gore mo nako ya gompieno go ba go ka nna le tshiamelo le tshiamiso ya gore setšhaba se sielwe metsi.
President Pumps is already on site and the project is expected to complete in March 2024. Let's go BTV News, Charles Hill.
The Assistant Minister of Local Government and Rural Development, Mr. Mabuse Pule, has implored organizations involved in child protection to capacitate young parents with proper parenting skills that could have a positive impact in shaping the future of their children. Mr. Pule said this when briefing the media on issues affecting children's rights in Botswana.
As child service organizations as well as different stakeholders are right on their feet to deal with the many issues of child abuse, the Assistant Minister still has a strong belief that the role of parents in the upbringing of children is still relevant, as it is a must that young ones are familiarized with their rights, but more importantly, knowing their responsibilities through their parents.
We don't want to talk about children's rights alone, but they are prevalent, but they have to be mixed with responsibilities, which means we should not only be preaching rights, and we don't talk about it. Because if we do that, we're going to create a gap within the children themselves, because children should also be taught how to be responsible. We should actually teach our children how to grow up responsibly, teach them the language, teach them some cultural taboos, and equally teach parents to really work with their kids to grow them into responsible citizens of this country.
One of the findings, one of the main themes that come up while analyzing our data is around violence and abuse. It is 29% of the data that we get that have a link to this specific topic, physical and mental health. It's 34% of the contacts that come in that are related to this specific theme.
There are a couple of efforts put in by key stakeholders to ensure that issues like these are solved either in monetary form by the private sector and the government. However, it is said that these efforts are not enough, hence a lot has to be done.
We're also concerned about the budgetary allocation, the entire SADC region, which we have found it in most cases to be inadequate. Even here in Botswana for the past years, we have done a budgetary analysis to see how much money goes into child care.
Mr. Motshwari Kitswa further highlighted that there is a 40% drop in terms of funding of these organizations from individual donors and private institutions. He, however, encouraged relevant bodies to collaborate if the sustainable solutions for these issues are to be found for the greater good of children. BTV News, Gaborone.
Extension 2 Senior Magistrate Queen Mwanga has revoked the bail of Waitsi Ganata Motlamedi Moreri and Offense Maruping and ordered that they be confined to jail until their sentencing. This decision follows a judgment in which they were convicted for robbery. Unkutlule Tamare.
Some of the accused persons who are Itse Kanata Matlamedi Moreri and Offense Maruping have been on bail, while Thapelo Ramakwidi and Tato Kenaupe were denied bail and have always been in custody. When delivering judgment, Magistrate Mwanga told the accused that the court has convicted them of robbery of Basani Tacheba, as the prosecution and investigating team have proved their case beyond reasonable doubt. Magistrate Mwanga then revoked the bail of Waitse Kanata, Motlamedi Moreri and Offense Maruping, and that they be confined to jail until their sentencing, and further instructed the police to take fingerprints of all the accused persons. She says the reasons advanced by the accused in that defense are baseless, as it clearly surfaced during investigations that there was communication between the accused persons in preparation for their mission to rob a certain house in Mangkhodi village before passing on to break another house in Mokhonye, where Basani Tacheba was the target. Magistrate Mwanga says all the state witnesses were consistent in giving that testimony, as the first witness being Basani Tacheba shared with the court sequence of events on the 4th of May 2023 when he was attacked. She says other witnesses confidently shared with the court how they know the accused persons and where they had sold the stolen items. Magistrate Mwanga adjourned the case to the 12th of December this year, where the accused will inform the court of extenuating circumstances when sentencing them. On the same day, the court will sentence the accused. Unkutle Thamage, BTV News, Gaborone.
The measure of the Ministry of Transport and Public Works and the Ministry, formerly known as Infrastructure and Housing Development, has resulted in changes to their approved functional and deployment structures. The Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Transport and Public Works, Mr. Kakamalo Kisajwang, says these changes are likely to mostly affect the infrastructural sector. Finalization of the measure will effect on the 1st of April 2024. Ingemali Moyo with the report.
The ministry purposes itself to provide safe, reliable and sustainable infrastructure and transport in order to stimulate economic and socio-economic growth. However, with the recent changes, which came after consultations done last year, there is likely to be challenges, especially for officers deployed to the infrastructure department. Furthermore, employees are urged to adapt to the changes without any resistance to further the mandate of the ministry.
And the changes only, according to the latest version of the draft structure, is within the infrastructure sector. And this is logic, like I was saying. We were joined by another sector, being the transport, which is heavily involved in infrastructure development, infrastructure planning, as well as infrastructure maintenance. And it came and found the ministry in existence already with another volume of infrastructure activities within the public works or the build works. So it was necessary when we were to reconfigure ourselves to look at what was really coming through to us from the other sector or from the other ministry.
Union representatives made recommendations towards the report, emphasizing on the need to use changes to further enhance service delivery.
It means for bontsi ba batho ra go transferiwa go dikgaolong tsone tsa district, and kopo ya rona jaaka mokalengwana a bua ke gore a re amogele di-transfer. The other one e re tshwanetse go bua ka yone ba ga e tshwane le yone le gore pele ha structure se se dirwa re na le di-gap tsa di-scale yaanong mo structure se sešwa se di-gap tse di tswetse ba gaetso
go te go ne le dikgang tse gore ga ngwe thulaganyo tse dintsinyana ga di diragala bangwe ba latlhegelwa ke ditiro ke dilo dingwe tse re reng gore ga re nke re batla re eletsa go bona di diragala mme ke le sologetse ke re ga gona ope o tla latlhegelwang ke tiro mme ke be ke le rotloetse gore jaaka go tabe go diragala gore o ka nna re ka mosobo go te wena ga o kwa o se ka gana go tsamaya o dumele gore o tsamaye ka gore ke tiro ya mohiri o rile a re
The structure will effect on the 1st of April 2024, and it's hoped to be a tool to speed up the process of the country's developments, despite unanticipated challenges. Inge Malimoyo, BTV News, Gaborone.
Silibe Pikwe Mayor Lucas Mudimana has encouraged residents of BOTSWANA ward to form cooperatives as they are a means to alleviate poverty and unemployment by economically empowering local residents. The mayor said this recently during a meeting with BOTSWANA ward residents Mamusi Siska and Getsaone Kile.
Government aims to foster national economic inclusivity, benefiting all and contributing to the country's economy. Cooperatives are recognized as a key strategy to support these intentions. Silibe Pikwe, with abundant opportunities, can stimulate economic growth, create jobs, and empower the local population.
E toka re boele go khanya dikoparase re tshwaetse ke buile mo khoteng yone ya rona ya botshebelo ga le ga gologela ka totomai ke buile ka sepatela sonese se leng gore batho ba tile ko ofising ya rona ba re ba se rekile ba eta mo khoteng yone ya rona mme gone re buile ka yone gore a re tshwaraganeng ka koparase re tseng dithoto tse ba di tsere mme ga go late bone ba batamba jaaka ba sepatela ba rekile sepatela se tswe re shimi dikoparase tse o no sipa gore e ka re go na le mothalanyana a ba bangwe bana no renka pele ba koporasi ba go batla di-ambulance ba teng ko go rona re ba kopanya le ba sepatela ba sa ene tumelano ya gore rona yanong re le koporasi re tala sapola ka di-ambulance le yone puso tota.
Despite being the primary ward in Pikwe with more residents, BOTSWANA faces water shortages and other challenges.
Re baby ba councilor re le bathano le mabidisi ba le bathano rotera re sopo sengwe ha ke ba bitsa re kopana gore re bue ka tsa motso wa rona ga gona mathata re dira jalo re a buisana mme re a naelana
re nna mo tshabelo ma go gona le metsi mme re thola ka lenyora ya ha ka bana motšhini ya la mo su hela o hetana e tsura ba e hile hela lo ta thola re ile go thola go sna metsi
ba di office tsenetse re kopang dipambisana go tswane a ko ba re thohaletse gore re ha rapla re kgone gore re ratege re itse re se khwase sa reng
jaaka le bona mephato e meraro yo etswetswe ga re le loka gore botsadi le ame ka dinao le kate le nne le disitse ka gore ha o sa diri jalo ngwana wa go iphithela ngo go tanga se go form 1 a se go form 4 yo a se go yubi kana go tertiary.
Government departments have pledged to provide exceptional service to the nation.
Rona re ikemiseditse gore bao ba ba sa kgone go tlhaloganya sekgowa ba te ko ofising ya rona re te go ba filela difomo ke ete ke nne ke tlhalose mo diphuthegong tsa dikgota gore ha le sa kgone go ta ko ofising le re founela le re bolelle re ta le lata
yone ga ile gore ke a long term re irile mo eleng gore ga te re tabo re zona botshabelo zoning ke gore re tabo re dira mo eleng gore ke di sector metsi a taba a tsena mo sectoreng a tsena mo sectoreng so go ga teng go a go itsa gore e re bankanya go ngwe ka botshabelo o tha ba sa short metsi.
The town council has allocated 40 million pula for internal roads infrastructure projects, urging locals to take a leading role in execution.
The city of Francistown Council Mayor Kgodisang Radisego says Nyangangwe Referral Hospital will be refurbished in the next financial year. Mr. Radisego revealed this when officially opening the full council session, stating that 45 million pula has been budgeted for the refurbishment of the hospital in the next financial year. Abigail Madorobo reports.
Honorable Councillors, as you are well aware, Nyangangwe Referral Hospital is overdue for major refurbishment since it has never been done since the establishment of Patala Sarunaka in 1989. We are therefore grateful that 45 million pula has been budgeted for the hospital in the next 2 financial years, which will go a long way in uplifting the face of the facility. The accident and emergency department, the laboratory, and all the major wards will benefit from this development, honorable councillors. Due to persistent water shortages, a second water shortage tank at estimated cost of approximately 2 million pula will be provided. I'm proud to announce that the laboratory facility in Nyangago Hospital has been assessed and passed the preliminary assessment, qualifying it to retain its full accreditation status. This means our lab offers high standard operation delivery results that can be trusted internationally.
It is time for sports with Ntabogang Sebatlela. Ntebo. How are you, ma'am?
I got good news for you.
I can tell by the look in your face that you've got good news.
Our first game, Botswana won Kenya 36-28 African Netball Cup.
That's fantastic. I think we are right. This is a great start to festive season.
It is a great start, a great motivator to the festive season. Thank you very much, Khomuza. And remember, tomorrow Botswana is taking Kenya again, the Maize in Kenya.
Wow.
So I think we are not giving Kenya a chance.
No, there's no chance. The Maize have to do the job.
The Maize have to do the job.
They have to seal the job.
Yes. Thank you very much, my lady. Botswana Tonight Sports News follows with me, Ntabogang Sebatlela. Botswana Football Association, in collaboration with FIFA, launches Football for Schools in the Nhabe Football Region, aimed at contributing to education, development and empowerment of children. This grassroots program focuses on boys and girls under the ages of 8, 10 and 12, and is part of FIFA's initiative to bridge the gap between undeveloped and developed countries by introducing children to football development programs at a tender age. Anthony Ntabogang.
Football for Schools is a program that was introduced by FIFA as a way of developing football around the globe and improving the competitiveness in football in continents like Africa and Asia. Botswana Football Association introduced this program in Maung to help grow the standard of footballers around the Nhabe football region by equipping them with techniques and developing their skills at a young age.
Le simologa le go FIFA e le gore FIFA e le mogaga gona le gepe tona ha gare ga mahatsa a tlhabologa mo kgweleng ya dinao la tlhabologileng ba bua jalo ba lebile gore ha re ya World Cup every time re soletse go bona Germany, re soletse go bona England, re soletse go bona Netherlands, the same countries throughout. Lenano le tota maikelo magolo a lona ke gore re simolle bana ba le banyenyane gore ba kgona go goroga ko bana ba mahatsa ba ba goroga nteng le bona ba bone di benefits tsa football.
Really, Minister of Education, we are going through a transformation. We have from the traditional content-based education to outcome-based education. And the core more outcome-based education is to facilitate learners, or remotivate the talent, new knowledge, and activate their dreams for achieving the
Nhabe Regional Football Association and local coaches appreciated this program and emphasized that they will embrace and develop this program for future generations.
It's an opportunity for partnership. I want to say about the also he tell, like I say he tell la bonte tota mo ba name. But we are already another small. O ka nna botlhokwa e ka re hapele hale. E be le gore launch ne ka ya tsimologo. E bile le one ka ya bohello jwa program e. Are segetse mo. E ra e ka re yo mo wa itebana. Re gapolla ne gore la tha bana.
And seriously, as a coach as well, Nhabe has got a lot of talent. Talent I have reproduce it, mention from school sports through the teams region. I do have some players who represent the national team.
This project will be conducted in schools like Buseja Primary School, Butsolelo Primary, Sokoma Primary and Bonata Primary School, and the identified schools will be consulted on how the program will be rolled out in 2024. Anthony Tomarang, BTV Sports, Maung.
The manager of Botesh Company at Suwa Town, Mr. Sebelo Matikiti, says in order for the country to have a bright future in sports, it has to work hard in developing players at a young age. He noted this at the 2023 Botesh Chess Championships competitions recently. Matikiti says in the competitions, 80,000 pula, 60% was used in preparations for the youth section players to take part in this tournament. Karabo Sibili with the report.
Botesh's vision is to grow chess at grassroots and amateur level, as this would help enrich the sport, hence their partnership with Botswana Chess Federation.
If you look at the future of this country in terms of sports, it actually lies in youth development. We cannot expect to win a number of gold medals at the Olympics. It is for that reason that we believe that 60% of this sponsorship must go towards youth, these kids, the young people. And then it's for that reason that we believe that you need to drive the bulk of that sponsorship to the youth, so that we can be able to develop and nurture the youth and have world champions coming out of here.
Very, very critical for the development of kids in the area, so it aligns very well with our part of our strategic maneuver to develop them young.
Amal Mukisa and Lindiwe Malunga excelled in the under-20 players section.
This is my first tournament. It wasn't really easy, but I thank my parents for the support, my coaches for teaching me.
Puso Masuta was crowned the open section champion and pocketed 5,500 pula. Spencer Musango from Zimbabwe finished second, while Utile Mapini settled for third position.
I think winning the competition, if you have a daily routine at chess, it makes it easier for
Refilwa Gabatwari clinched the women championship and pocketed 3,500 pula prize money, followed by Atam Museu and Maya Utimile in the second and third position respectively.
Along the way, I played strong opponents like Dudeto Sabure, the WGM, and my game was really challenging. I didn't expect to win, so I'm just happy for winning this tournament.
Botswana Chess Federation and Botash promise to continue working together to increase the number of sporting activities in Suwa and advance the drive to use sport as a tool for development. Karabo Sibili, BTV Sport, Suwa.
And now, and lastly, shifting focus into tennis. As a way of growing tennis at grassroots level, Botswana Tennis Association is hosting a 3-day International Tennis Place Day coaches course, which started on the 25th of this month at Botswana National Tennis Center in Gaborone. Victoria Dakin and Hobwana Onesehedi with the details.
Junior Tennis Initiative Coordinator Brighton Giting pointed out that upon the successful completion of the ITF Play Tennis course, the participants will be able to work with young beginner players as well as have knowledge of tactics and relevant technical instruction to provide to them.
The reason why I choose to read a course it helps or introduce bana tennis is so that we can have more progression from Banawa and Siwavakotas, because you know what's about progress as some they quit, lose interest, but now the more we have, I'll use the word foundation. Haranala Banawa and Tiaramo foundation, and then it's good. And also it helps for a good foundation, set a good foundation, the kids to know what to do, the good tactics and all sorts of stuff.
Botswana Tennis Association is trying to get as many coaches as possible around the country. And these are one of the initiatives and steps that are critically important. How to teach kids, how to handle kids, how to be around kids, and how the patience of coaching. But you can always tip people.
Course participants had this to say about the course.
We have an initiative where we're giving back to the community in Odi. We had an event on the 11th where we had a training clinic for the kids of the community. It is from there, the publicity that we got on Facebook, that we got an invitation to attend this course. So my colleague and I, we managed to complete the prerequisite, which was the online course, and then to qualify to come and do this practical course. And it has enlightened us a lot, myself included, because we've seen the mistakes that we were making in the college.
I can go and apply them where I'm currently volunteering. I'm currently volunteering go Odi College, where I'm teaching kids around the community. So some things how to deal with them, how to control kids, how to do a lot of things. But then through this course, I'm learning how to speak to kids, how to make kids enjoy tennis.
The course attracted 18 participants, both male and female, who are former players and physical education teachers. The 4-day course, which comprises of theory and on-court assessment, started over the weekend and will run until the 28th of this month. Another course will be hosted in Francistown next month. Victoria Dakin, BTV Sport, Gaborone.
Bringing us to the end of our sports news tonight. Thank you for staying with us. And now back to Khomozo to give you the headlines.
I see that all of your sports stories really spoke to grassroots level activities.
Yes, Khomozo, it is really showing you that we need sports from a very young age. And I'm just wondering currently what is going to happen, because we know school sport has been not happening for a very long time now. So, I don't know. Okay. Should I say that national associations are trying to fill in the gaps by all these developments currently mushrooming there and there? Yes.
Okay. I think it's quite an interesting development. Thank you so much, and we'll meet again tomorrow. Have yourself a fantastic evening, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Khomozo. Do you have yourself a great night?
Thank you. That was Ntawarang giving us the latest in sports. Let's take a final look at stories leading the way this evening. Farmers encouraged to register in large numbers to benefit from the newly introduced agricultural inputs and support program, Temo Letlotlo. SAREC launches a gender mainstreaming resource kit. And in sports, development of chess players at grassroots level essential for creating future champions. That's all that we had for you in our news bulletin this evening. BTV News, Ikanyarona, hashtag BWMansaChange, Archanging. Up next is the weather update.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's weather focus brought to you by Leader Wadi Khomo. Let's take a look at the rainfall amount recorded this morning. Sarameng Primary School 10 millimeters, Mogodisani Police 7 millimeters, Mogodisani Kotla 4 millimeters, Havera Main Station 1 millimeter. Tomorrow we're expecting some partly cloudy conditions with possibility of isolated thundershowers over the entire country. In the morning, we're expecting hot temperatures over the entire country ranging between 20 and 25 degrees Celsius. In the afternoon, we're expecting hot temperatures over Chobe, southern southeast Gauteng and Kwening between 33 and 35 degrees Celsius. Ngamilan, Khansi and Kalahari districts, we're expecting very hot temperatures ranging between 36 and 38 degrees Celsius. Extremely hot temperatures expected over central and northeast ranging between 39 and 40 degrees Celsius. Therefore, the public is advised to take necessary precautions. As for the fire report, new fires were detected over Kalahari and central districts. The fire danger index shows very dangerous conditions over most parts of the country. Therefore, the public is advised to handle fire with care. As for the SADC region, partly cloudy conditions are expected over Port Elizabeth and Maseru, 24 degrees Celsius over both Maseru and Port Elizabeth. Some showers expected over Manzini, between 6 degrees Celsius. Antananarivo, Beira, and Lusaka expecting some thunder showers with 35 degrees Celsius over Lusaka, and Beira 29 degrees Celsius over Antananarivo. Jerusalem expecting some showers with 30 degrees Celsius, while in Blantyre expecting some thunder showers with 35 degrees Celsius. That's the weather forecast. Good night.
The L'Oreal Foundation is awarding and celebrating women in science for the last 25 years. The reason for it, women scientists were made invisible for as long as science exists. Their discoveries and contributions were hindered, silenced, even stolen. And to change this, it's not just about an issue of equality or more equal societies. It is about better science for all.
I do research that is mostly focused on food safety measures. The aim is to develop adsorbents or materials that can be able to remove toxins from food, preferably maize and sorghum right now, because these are the staple food sources in our country and also in Africa, but they are very much susceptible to fungal infestation and mycotoxin contamination. So my study focuses on finding sustainable measures to remove these toxins. This award recognizes and awards young talents in Africa for their scientific work, and it is an award that is going to help me take my research forward, because it is funding which is going to support my research. This is the money that I'm going to be using to buy reagents, be able to access some instruments from outside, be able to pay for them and advance my research, because right now we have a problem with funding. I am currently self-sponsored, and so you can imagine how difficult it is to support my tuition fees and also to buy some stuff needed for my project. And with this money, then I can be able to fill up the gaps. I'm going to be able to fill up the gaps and be able to complete my studies. Being a girl, you are faced with a lot of challenges. Yeah, a lot of social obligations are there, and I just want to say to the young girls out there, don't be afraid to get into science, because there is support out there.
I started my academic journey at the University of Botswana in 2011 when I was pursuing my undergraduate degree in biological sciences. And then I completed that in 2015, did a bit of research with the Botswana Harvard Health Partnership. And in 2018, I got to pursue my master's in medical biosciences, which was in the University of Bradford in the UK. And in 2021, I then began my PhD in medical sciences.
The UN Climate Change Conference, COP28, is underway in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. The conference comes amid a worsening climate crisis evidenced by frequent extreme weather patterns, and is expected to be a milestone moment when the world will be taking stock of its progress on the Paris Agreement. Professor Joyce Lepetu from Botswana University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, BOTSWANA, was in studio this morning to discuss key issues expected to come out of COP28 negotiations.
Challenges, as we have rightly said, especially in terms of the increasing temperature changes, erratic rainfall. So in terms of really checking whether we are on track in terms of implementation of the Paris Agreement, we should be worried globally. And hence this COP28 is very critical, because it's where parties, that is countries and stakeholders, the private sector, is going to identify gaps and try to come up with new ways to ramp up this climate action. And probably this will also help policymakers to look at the climate change policies and their commitments in terms of focusing on coming up with the new climate action plans for 2025.
Right. Now, this is what an ordinary person would probably be asking themselves. We know that we are in the middle of a crisis. We've accepted that there is a problem. We've got a climate change crisis. We've set ourselves targets to say, no, we need to do certain things to reverse that. Why is it that we are still having a discussion on reaching those milestones? Why is progress not being made?
Remember, we are coming from different contexts, socio-economic contexts, as different countries. We have developing countries, mostly in Africa. We have small islands. We have developing countries. And one of the challenges, of course, is finance, is technology. As capacity, human capacity, do we have such to also be able to really reach progress on the milestones that we have set? And also remember, we had challenges along the way, like the COVID 2019. Hence, if countries have set aside some finance to be able to ramp up some of this climate action, that will also might have impacted, especially developing countries, to try to take money and now focus on health issues, because this was an emergency that could also have impacted some of the progress that the countries have set. We have just had the Ukraine and Russia war, which has also globally affected the countries and all that. So some of these global... Now we are
talking about the Israel-Gaza war.
Exactly. Yes. So some of these challenges, they do impact progress. But I think we are on track, because especially we are seeing, if I come down to Botswana, we are seeing a lot of ramping up in terms of energy transition. We are seeing solar energy transition. We are seeing the private sector coming onto board. If you look at some of the upcoming malls, for example, the airport junction, rooftops. Yeah, that shows us indeed some of the initiatives, we are taking them on board.
What's up with the rooftops?
The rooftops is solar energy. That is now you are going to be, we've transitioned from using the electricity, which is from BPC, generated by coal or diesel, and therefore moving into this solar energy, right, which is readily available, and we are transitioning and therefore reducing emissions.
Okay, we will get, we'll talk a little bit more about Botswana in a bit, but first I want to talk about this. Botswana, Ethiopia, Somalia have already declared a drought, and this should be something that is close to you because you're already in the industry, in the agricultural industry. But looking at that and what COP28 or the Paris Agreement is trying to achieve, we are constantly having new challenges coming up. Will we get to the point whereby we are able to achieve the milestones that we've set ourselves?
We should be. Remember, every country has submitted their climate action plans, which are called nationally determined contribution. Botswana as well has submitted its NDC in 2015. And in that, we are communicating our action in terms of reducing emission. We've set ourselves a target that by 2030, we should have reduced emissions by 15%. That is total, looking at the different sectors. We've also come up with adaptation plans to say, how are we going to build resilience in terms of adapting to this high temperature? So, for example, we look at the agri sector, which I believe when we mention those countries, you find that sometimes most of them are reliant on livestock. So how is it that we are going to continue improving our livestock, reducing emissions, but also increasing production in terms of the farmers' livelihoods?
Right. But these new challenges, which keep on occurring, well, they are not necessarily new, but they keep on coming up. They surely will impact on these achievements.
Definitely, definitely. And I think that's why it's going to be very critical at this COP. The output of this COP is that how are we as a global world going to help each other? Whether it's in terms of finance, whether it's in terms of technology, whether it's in terms of human capacity so that we all move towards achieving this goal that we set for the Paris Agreement.
Right.
So it is very important that the output or the outcome of this COP clearly communicates how they are going to be assisting, for example, developing countries. As you mentioned, rightly, we have major challenges. We are heavily impacted by this increase in temperatures and this erratic rainfall, and therefore you find that sometimes we need technological advance, we need capacity building, we need finance that we can be able to continue in our efforts to try to reach those targets that we have set for ourselves. So for me, I think we are still on track. There are challenges, but there is a willingness, and I think that is the most important thing, that the world is willing, because you cannot be left behind.
Right.
Especially, like we mentioned, we are seeing this continuous impacts.
Right. Now, when we look at Botswana and where Botswana is at the moment, what can we say? And what can we say to the world when we get to these meetings?
To the meetings. At the moment, we are actually reviewing our NDC, that is the nationally determined contribution, that climate action plan that we have set and set the target for 2050. So we are going to be able to identify in this NDC where we are, what have we achieved, what are the challenges, what do we need to do moving forward, what commitments do we need to do so that we move forward. But like I said, I'm seeing a lot of progress, especially in the energy sector, because we are seeing this transition into this solar, into this green technology, but also extending even to the agricultural sector. We have new technologies coming, that, like the agrivoltaic, this one that you pass by Buang, that is combining both the solar energy, but also increasing agricultural production.
How's the uptake, though? You may be citing it as an example, but how's the uptake?
The uptake, I think it's a new technology. Of course, new technology always needs financing. So at the moment, I think we are seeing good results from the Buang experiment. But I'm not at this moment able to say what is the uptake, how many farmers out there are able to adopt this technology. But I think farmers are interested, because if farmers are asking, what is this, how is it improving, it shows, like I said, there's willingness. Sometimes the challenge will be the financing, also accessing that technology. Is it accessible to an ordinary Motswana, at what cost, and all that. So those are some of the things that we need to look at, as well as we review our climate change communication plans.
You mentioned the private sector. How critical is the private sector in all of this? But also, you cited the issue of solar. I don't know whether that is the one thing that the private sector can get involved in Botswana with regards to trying to reverse the effects of climate change.
Definitely. I think the private sector can play a very critical role. And I'm very happy myself. I'm seeing they are. These days, when we look at Facebook, we are seeing many companies that are really into solar service provision, from the rooftops, like I said, to the solar geysers, to the boreholes. So in terms of the private sector, I think this is an opportunity really from the private sector, especially that Botswana, we have plenty of sunlight, I think 95%. So this is an opportunity that we can actually harness as a country, because this is extending to rural areas. In terms of solar, you don't need any other technology, you need the sun. So if you have access to this technology, a rural Motswana, a farmer out there should be able to ramp up their agri production and build resilience. So the private sector is very critical at the moment.
Well, we talk about the private sector, yes, and when we look at other things that the private sector can help, reverse these climate change effects, we also have to take into cognizance the fact that they are into business, and we are talking about financing of these changes, these adaptation measures. How do we convince them, and also what can be done to help the private sector to get engaged?
Mo bosegong ba gompieno re ithutile ka botlhokwa ja artificial intelligence mo go tsa thuto mo ba ithuting le bona ba ileng gore ke bona ba bantshang dithuto dikolo ka go farologana. Mme ke dumela jaanong gore o le motsadi o ne o ipotsa gore a mme go mo tota go botlhokwa mo matshelong a rona, a mme bana ba rona ba rutega ba ntse ba bua ka artificial intelligence. Ke dumela jaanong gore re utlwile re Motšhutšhuti a bua jaanong gore we must embrace artificial intelligence and we must adopt it and use it in the right ways because the opportunities are endless. Maybe ke tsa jalo gore rotlhe ra gakologelwa gore re mo 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Gongwe le gongwe ga o leng teng o itse jalo gore o na le karolo, o na le seabe mo go netefatseng jalo gore re lwantsha ebile re hetsa kgokgontsho ya bong mo malapeng a rona, mo ditirong tsa rona kgotsa go pegela ko e leng gore re amana le ba bangwe teng. Mme go tswa go nna le badiri ka nna mo Botswana Television go itlhelela re kopana gape mo nakong e tlang a nne boroko.
The road to destiny is not paved with brick and tar, but with vision and determination that unveil over time who we truly are when we get there. The Ministry of Transport and Public Works has embarked on a journey of transformation to enhance the efficiency of transport system in the Greater Gaborone area. This journey of the Greater Gaborone Urban Transport Improvement Project is funded by the Government of Botswana, assisted by the World Bank and OPEC Fund for International Development. The ideas adopted through this transport improvement project will for the next 25 years transform Greater Gaborone to a mobile compact city based on concepts of urban transport development in relation to land settlement and use. Wasting no time and without a moment to spare, the government of Botswana, through the Ministry of Transport and Public Works, initiated the construction of 3 bridges or overhead crosses along the KT Motsete Drive, Western Bypass. At the junction with Lobatse Road, Game City Circle, Willie Siboni Road, BTV Circle, and Kudumatse Drive, Rainbow Circle. The installation and operation of new modernized traffic signaling systems and centralized traffic control (CTC), as well as the layout improvement of selected intersections in Greater Gaborone. These projects will go a long way in enhancing critical transport infrastructure required for improving quality of life for citizens and visitors and strengthening economic development in the Greater Gaborone area. The ministry is set on fulfilling Vision 2036 aspirations for the benefit of all Botswana through sustainable roads of a global standard that promote prosperity for all. Ministry of Transport and Public Works, gateway to world-class infrastructure and transport services.
The hostages, but of course, although the families of those hostages are so relieved to have their loved ones back, they will know that after such a traumatic experience, it might be very difficult for them to readapt to some kind of normality. And many of the hostages are learning that their mothers or fathers, grandparents or siblings were killed in the October the 7th massacre. And so specialists have been advising the families on how they might help those released to cope now that they are back in Israel. Well, to discuss all this, I'm now joined on the line from Nashville in Tennessee by Jonathan Metzl. He is a psychiatrist and sociologist at Vanderbilt University. First of all, I want to thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Metzl. Thank you so much. I don't know if it's possible to separate the two traumas, witnessing what happened on October the 7th, that massacre, and then the subsequent being held in packed captivity. How will people who witnessed, saw that massacre on October the 7th, how will they cope with having that in their minds?
Well, I think you're exactly right. If you're asking about the hostages, it's almost unimaginable. I mean, I'm a psychiatrist. We have a full literature on responses to trauma. We have a literature on responses to hostage taking, but I don't think there's really a literature for seeing your spouse or your child or your relative or your friend murdered and then immediately being taken into captivity. So having no narrative, in other words, no narrative about what happened. You're grieving while you're also fighting for your own life, and then we're learning more about the horrific conditions of this captivity for certain captives. And so processing that with a complete lack of information about what happened, or in some cases, direct disinformation. And so it's trauma on top of trauma. And then now that people are coming back, they're now going to learn the story about everything that's happened since then, and about what happened to the fate of their kibbutz or their relatives. And so it's really like almost 3 distinct traumas that are all coming down on people. And I think you're right that really time and patience and expert help and family support are all going to be so important, because again, I just can't remember times within the my experience of working in this field where people were dealing with 3 such profound traumas, and particularly since we don't even know what happened to them when they were being held hostage.
We hear that they're being given advice by specialists in Israel. What do you think they might be being told? What sort of advice might they be given?
When people emerge from these kind of situations, they are anxious, they are terrified. A lot of times they worry all the time that this kind of thing could happen again. They can be volatile or depressed or anxious, all the natural responses, in fact, responses that probably helped keep them alive when they were being held hostage. And so I think patience, support, calm, asking for help, community, all those things, I'm certain are going to be very important, in addition to whatever kinds of group process. I mean, people who have these kind of experiences feel like they've understandably gone through an experience that is almost unimaginable for people who haven't gone through it. And so talking to people who've been in situations like that down the road, I think it's important right now, as much as possible, to keep them out of the eye of the media, at least for now. And so all the things are happening, but I think it's also important to note that every case is different. People's conditions of captivity were different. People were taken hostage in different situations. And people are psychologically different. So I'm betting every case will be just a case-by-case basis.
And from what you know about these sort of situations, are there certain types of personality that cope better, perhaps, with captivity than others?
Well, again, it's hard to answer because we don't know the conditions of this captivity in particular. Did they have engagement with other hostages? Did they have interactions with the captors, the kidnappers? What were their conditions in terms of food, in terms of cleanliness? I think the main thing is, did they often think they were going to die at certain points, which is often a trigger for post-traumatic stress disorder. So certainly I can say that, I know that soldiers were taken captive as well, and they probably had a bit more advanced training, of course, in terms of how to deal with these situations. But I mean, you're talking about like little kids and people's grandparents and people who've just seen their spouses murdered or seen horrific scenes of rape or things like that. And so I would bet that really, again, it's just really it's gonna matter. All these variables are going to matter in terms of kind of how people recover after something like this.
What sort of damage might they suffer? I saw something earlier about how some of them, the families, were being told to be careful about hugging relatives when they arrived, that they wouldn't be used to human contact necessarily immediately, and to be very careful about personal space. Is that often a symptom?
Well, again, all those things can be. I mean, you just think about the standard trauma response of what's called hyperreflexia, feeling like any noise is going to be an attack. feeling anxious. I certainly think that, especially if people were physically abused, that fears of touch can be triggering in a way. And again, I think that fear that this thing is going to happen again, never feeling safe, never being able to relax, to feel like you're safe. And again, they're walking back into a very tense situation geopolitically in general. It's not like they're going back to the Club Med or something. And so, in a way, I just think, again, really, I think the importance that I want to stress is a case-by-case basis. We can certainly give general guidelines, but I think that really learning from people what their response is going to be important, again, because this situation is so unique and uniquely traumatizing.
And we're told sometimes that children are extraordinarily resilient. Do you think that they have a better chance than some of the adults of moving forward?
Again, it depends on their community support. I mean, kids can be very, very resilient. Again, I think it's going to take a true reckoning of what happened in this traumatizing situation. We know for sure. I mean, kids survived concentration camps and the Holocaust and came to live full normal lives. There was still some part of their psyche that was traumatized. So it's not like there's not a history of kind of overcoming this kind of thing. It's not like they're doomed for life. But again, I just think that so much will depend on what happened to them in captivity, what their memory of it is, and how they process that going forward.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for your thoughts, Mr. Metzl. Jonathan Metzl there speaking to us from Nashville in Tennessee, from Vanderbilt University, a psychiatrist and a sociologist, with his thoughts there on how those hostages and their families might deal with the release from captivity. Well, to other news now, and 3 Chinese Navy ships have arrived in Myanmar on a goodwill visit. That's part of a renewed Chinese defence engagement amid Chinese concern about a surge of fighting between Myanmar junta forces and insurgents near the Chinese border. A guided missile destroyer and frigate were escorted by a Myanmar frigate to docks in Yangon in Myanmar. That's according to a statement from the Chinese Navy. More on the situation in Myanmar now from Cami Knight.
Civilians in the northeast of Myanmar scramble for cover. It's unclear when this video was filmed, but it shows people begging Chinese officials to let them across the border as they flee the fighting. Footage of these trucks on fire was filmed further north, but along the same border. The vehicles were carrying goods from China. State media has described it as an insurgent attack. The violence is part of a coordinated offensive by ethnic militias that started in the country's Shan state in the northeast. 3 armed groups launched an operation on the 27th of October in an effort to overthrow the military junta, who since then has been losing strategic towns, military positions and vital trade routes in the region. But the rebellion has intensified in other parts of Myanmar too, in the north, west and southeast of the country, turning into the largest and most geographically spread escalation in clashes since the 2021 military coup. The junta relies on airstrikes and heavy weaponry, and concerns are rising over the toll it's taking on civilians. Hundreds of people have been killed, and hundreds of thousands are now newly displaced.
I heard rumors that military troops were advancing towards our villages and were shooting at civilians. People living there were too scared to stay at home. Everyone ran away.
The fighting in Myanmar also threatens to disrupt relations with its regional neighbours, notably China, its most important ally and main trading partner. It started holding military drills along its side of the border and on Tuesday announced the arrival of 3 Navy ships in Myanmar to conduct what it calls security exercises.
Well, here in France, the Interior Minister is to propose a ban on some ultra-right groups thought to be behind recent protests. At the weekend, about 100 ultra-right activists from different parts of France and wearing balaclavas marched through a district of Romans-sur-Isère in southeastern France. They were demanding justice for Thomas, the name of a 16-year-old boy who had been stabbed to death at a village dance in Crépol nearby the previous weekend. The French National Assembly held a minute's silence for Thomas this Tuesday.
Islam, get out of Europe. The chant by around 100 ultra-nationalist protesters marching through the centre of Lyon. The southeastern city, it's a stronghold of France's extreme right, but protests like this have spread to other corners of the country. That includes Rennes, here on Sunday, and Reims, where protesters called for justice for Thomas. The murder of the teenager a week ago has revived tensions and brought far-right groups out in number. The Interior Minister, Gérald Darmanin, said on Tuesday that he would react firmly.
I will request that the group called the Martel Division, along with 2 others, are shut down. I would not allow any extremist group, far-right or otherwise, to take the law into their own hands.
In the past few years, these ultra-nationalist groups have become more visible as they organise their rallies on social media. They called for November to be a national month of mobilisation in Europe. And it's ringing alert bells for some.
We're seeing the return of this identitarian movement that we thought had disappeared. All these groups are very small local groups, so they're quite shadowy and secretive. Now they've gone online and they're all talking to each other. These are the types that seem to be taking charge today.
Intelligence services estimate there are some 3,000 ultra-right nationalists active in France, 1,300 of them under surveillance.
And still in France, the authorities have arrested the leader of a multinational tantric yoga organization amid suspicions that he is indoctrinating female followers for sexual exploitation. The guru at the heart of the Atman Yoga Federation was detained during a major morning police operation across the Paris region today. That's according to a French judicial official. Well, French media have identified the guru as Gregorian Bivoluaru, who is an internationally known yoga teacher and an author. He's being charged with human trafficking, with kidnapping, rape, and the organised abuse of weakness by members of a sect. That's according to the French authorities. Well, as the world gears up for the environmental summit, COP28 in Dubai this week, today we're going to be focusing on the situation in Cuba, as we have all this week, been looking at a particular environmental issue. And in Cuba, hurricanes and rising sea temperatures are having serious consequences on Cuba's economy, and that's leading to failing tobacco production and lobster farming. Here's the story.
A crucial sector of the Cuban economy, tobacco. Here in Tabacuba, 3,500 employees grow the leaves used to wrap Cuba's famous cigars. But with hurricanes increasingly common and intense, these fragile greenhouses are vulnerable.
As soon as the wind exceeds 60 kilometers an hour, we have to completely dismantle the greenhouses because they risk being destroyed. We mobilize all of our workforce for that.
And after the storm, more time is lost just reassembling everything.
All this brings serious delays. Everything has to be shifted. It means we cannot harvest before April, so yields are worse. The plants attract more insects and diseases. As a result of all this, we couldn't harvest as many tons of tobacco as we had forecast this year.
Climate change can also move slowly, but the impact is real for the island's lobsters. 80% of the catch is exported, but rising sea temperatures are pushing crustaceans to deeper waters. That's a problem for the state business where Jordan works. It has no funds to move 16,000 of these underwater cages further out to sea, or to buy new ones.
These cages are made with materials that the country needs to build people's houses. These materials are difficult to import due to the country's economic situation.
The business aimed to catch 2,000 tons of lobster this year, but it fell 800 short.
Now the temperatures are summery almost all year round. This affects what we call the larva release stage, when the water is a bit cooler around October and November, when the lobsters are in better conditions to reproduce.
The government also lacks the funds to implement large-scale environmental policies, even though global warming already has a visible impact on the entire island.
One of the biggest problems for Cuba in the short term is rising water levels. I'm not talking about flooding brought on by hurricanes, but about a permanent rise in sea levels, which are estimated to increase 29 centimeters by 2050.
Rising sea levels mean hundreds of square kilometers of land will be lost, and salt levels will increase in fresh water supplies, a danger to islanders' access to drinking water.
And time now for business news today with Yuka Roya. Hi, Yuka.
Hi, Angela.
So this commercial jet, with its 100% sustainable fuel, has now arrived. It's crossed the Atlantic, and it's the first time that's ever happened, yeah?
That's right. Well, the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, operated by Virgin Atlantic, flying from London, has just landed in New York at JFK Airport. It was filled with about 60 tons of biofuels like cooking oil and synthetic kerosene. Sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF for short, is seen as key for the aviation industry's effort to reduce its carbon footprint. The sector accounts for about 2 to 3% of global CO2 emissions. Now, the fuel still emits the same amount of carbon while the plane is flying, but unlike fossil fuels, it's made from plants that have absorbed CO2 earlier or from animal waste. Virgin says that overall, it can cut a plane's emissions by 70%. But critics warn that the hype about this kind of experiment hides inconvenient truths about SAFs. Sustainable fuels are much more expensive than traditional kerosene and represent just 0.1% of all jet fuels in use today. Commercial airlines are currently banned from using a blend with more than 50% SAF. Tuesday's flight, it has to be said, was a demo flight with no paying passengers on board. The biggest challenge, though, is scaling up production of waste-based SAF. One study said that almost 9,000 dead pigs would be needed to fuel a flight from Paris to New York. Synthetic e-fuels that are made by combining CO2 captured from the air with hydrogen are even more expensive. Here's what Virgin's founder, Richard Branson, had to say.
It's going to take a while before we can get enough fuel where everybody's going to be able to fly. But you've got to start somewhere. And if we didn't prove it could be done, you would never ever get sustainable aviation fuel. If we hadn't proven that you could actually build planes made of carbon fiber, then they wouldn't have happened. So you've got to make these first steps.
Staying on the environment, as the world's attention turns to a new round of annual UN climate talks kicking off in Dubai, the US government is auctioning off a spate of new oil and gas leases. Over the next fortnight, the US Bureau of Land Management is slated to auction off 63 drilling rights in 6 states, starting in Wyoming, where around 35,000 acres of land are up for grabs. The lease sale comes weeks after an appeals court ordered the government to carry out an oil and gas lease sale in the Gulf of Mexico, as stipulated in President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. Environmental groups denounced the move, saying it contradicts Biden's campaign pledge to end all drilling on federal land and waters. Meanwhile, here in France, President Emmanuel Macron has announced a plan to launch a massive call for tender in 2025 to develop offshore wind farms. Macron said he wants to have 10 gigawatts of electricity produced from floating wind turbines by 2035, enough to power 10 million households for a year. The aim is to reach 45 gigawatts by 2050, which would make offshore wind the country's second largest source of power after nuclear energy.
Sur l'éolien flottant, on sait que c'est une filière d'avenir.
We know that floating wind turbines are the future.